All right. Welcome to my webinar, Building and Selling a Business Case for Reliability. I appreciate everyone for joining me. I'm looking forward to this one today. And so my name is Joe Anderson. I'm the host of the webinar. I've been with, we founded Reliability X in about 2018. Prior to that, I was a practitioner for about 25 years. Have a bunch of certifications, degree in business administration. And so, with this methodology or this process, this 9-step process I'm going to talk about today, this is a process I pretty much use throughout my career. And so I just kind of want to cover some of those things. They're kind of intertwined, both building and selling, because while you're building the business case, you're engaging other people. And through engaging, you're actually selling them then and there as well for support. So we'll get into that. But first, who is Reliability X? So Reliability X really is an empowerment company. That's what our focus is to empower and train and develop other people to do work at a best practice level. And I'm proud of this company. I'm proud of those that work for this company. This company has 2 CMRP of the Year award winners. We're the only company in the world to have that. We also own Maintenance and Reliability Best Practice, which has been the best-selling book in our industry for the past 15 years or so. And we're also a recipient of the Solutions Award, which is our approach to bridging the gap between operations and maintenance to improve bottom lines within plant facilities. We also have 2 Uptime Award winners and 2 CRL Black Belts. So I believe credentially, we're probably the only company in the world that has those credentials. So with that, let's get started. I appreciate you again for joining me today, and let's go. So I talked about a little bit before the 9-step process. So while you're building and selling a business case, you're going to be doing a little bit of both until you get it to a point where you have to present it to a management group. Yeah. But these are kind of the steps that I follow. And so number one, first off, is understanding the organizational needs. We have to understand that. We have to identify the stakeholders. We have to highlight benefits when talking to those stakeholders. We have to address some of the risk, and then we have a plan. And our plan is it's a high-level plan, and what we're looking to do is to try to overcome some of the objectives that we get, and then be prepared for follow-up questions. We also want to show an ROI. We want to engage the stakeholders while we're building this, and then be able to address any questions or concerns that come up, and then follow up with them afterwards to show that you're serious about it. And so my goal is just to kind of walk through these 9 steps. Hopefully this adds some value and helps you today. So this will be a fairly shorter webinar, unless I get to rabbit holing, but hopefully it adds value. So step number 1, before we do anything within an organization, when we're in a management role, even if we're not in a management role, we have to understand the organization's needs. Yeah. And typically every year, organizational objectives are posted. Objectives are 1 year or less things that can be achieved. Okay. Goals are 3 to 5 year. Okay. So typically there's a set of goals that the company has, and they're typically harder to find at times. But the objectives are fairly clear. And every year they set objectives. We have to understand what those objectives are, and also understand what the new language is being used, right? So last year it could have been, we need to eliminate waste. And this year it could be, well, we need to cut costs. Whatever you're hearing, and you're hearing your upper management speak, that's kind of the new language. We need to understand that. Yeah, because we're going to use that to our advantage. That's called playing politics. Yeah. So understand, what are the organizational objectives? For example, we want 10% EBITDA this year. Well, what does that mean? So we have to understand that and how we can impact EBITDA. Well, we want, no safety incidents. We want, 1% quality complaints, right? So there'll be the set of objectives. Typically, there'll be a safety one, there's a cost one, there's a quality one, right? There'll be a social responsibility one or an environmental one. There's always, 6 or 7 typically. But understand, right? Those objectives, those are outputs. So when you're selling any reliability initiative, we need to understand that reliability is the input to achieve all the outputs that they're looking to achieve as an organization. And when we understand that, it's really easy to talk through this when we're selling this. Yeah. We're also going to throw in some of the current language. Also, what are the problems, or a single problem or multiple problems that we're trying to address? What are we looking to solve? The mistake I find in a lot of organizations is we're really good at being problem tellers. We're not very good at being problem solvers. So it's really easy to tell everybody all the problems that exist. But the value comes in solving the problems. And that's where you get results. And so be a problem solver. What are we looking to solve? Everybody knows the organization has problems. It's not a hidden thing. But there's very minimal people that can go out and solve problems. Be the one to solve the problem. Yeah. And what are the current priorities of the organization? So at times business needs change right in the middle of the year, and a new language is being used, something else took priority. Yeah. Figure out what those things are. What we find a lot of times, and I've done this now a few times, this little experiment, when I'm sitting with a group of people from multiple plants together in a training class, including C-suite individuals, I go up to a dry erase board and I say, name all of the projects or initiatives that you've got going on currently. And we'll do that for about 15 minutes. I'll get to about 50 or 60 and we'll stop. What most people don't understand is everybody thinks solutioning needs a project, or everybody else's project is a higher priority. So how do you get your reliability initiative to the top of that list to where it takes priority? Yeah. And that comes into, when you're engaging people and selling them, how well you do there. Okay. But what you find is those 50 projects that we have going on, or 50 initiatives that we have going on at the same time, typically are all wanting to utilize the same resources. Now, as a maintenance manager, I can tell you that those 50 projects, I only had so many guys. And those 50 initiatives or projects, they wanted my guys to go do all the work. And so nothing ever got done, because nothing was a priority. It was whoever screamed the loudest that day. The great thing about reliability is it's the right work, and the right work never changes. And so what we need to do is tailor our pitch towards that, and to show the way that we can affect the bottom line. This is why Six Sigma and Lean are really going through it right now, because for years they've claimed quadrillions of dollars in savings, but hardly any of that has ever hit the bottom line. With reliability, we affect the bottom line. And so as long as we understand that, we can sell the project. Next is identifying your stakeholders. You have to determine who the key decision makers are. And this at times can be tough. And I'll give you an example as to what I mean about that. At the plant level, it's really hard to know who is for you and who's against you at the top at times. And sometimes you'll create enemies when you're driving improvement and you don't even know you have them. And I'll give you an example. When I was maintenance manager at Smuckers, I came in and my goal was to show a baseline of what a maintenance department looks like under TPM, under actual TPM, because they were launching Procter and Gamble style of TPM, which basically eliminates the maintenance department and makes them like lead operators, and then there's like an I&E department. And so when they brought me in, they wanted me to build a business case to do that. I didn't find out until after I had left. Well, I actually got fired from there. That, talking to some corporate folks that I knew, that there were people railing against me at corporate for the things that I was doing. Why? Because I was showing them up. So a lot of people get into these corporate positions and get promoted because they make a lot of promises. They don't keep their promises. And so here, lowly old me, Mr. Maintenance Manager, comes in and starts turning a plan around, and we're getting phenomenal results. But it makes them look bad because it's counterintuitive to the initiative that they wanted to roll out. And so I had enemies that I wasn't aware of, and, kind of railing against me. But just be aware of that. Okay. Understand that. If you know who they are, they're great to have on your side. Okay. Especially the ones that are the toughest on you and ask the toughest questions, because those are the ones that will help you improve. But you need to know who those decision makers are. If you think about it, it could just be, people within your department, but there's more than that. Okay. We have to identify them. We have to know what their interests, what their concerns are, how they like to communicate, which requires a lot of work on our end. Some people like an email. Some people like face-to-face. Some people take a phone call. How do they like to communicate? But you need to get their feedback as you're putting this case together for a reliability initiative. So stakeholder groups, let's talk about them. The first group is your internal stakeholders. Again, these are people within your organization. Could be executives, could be managers, employees. It should be all of them, actually. I would try to engage as many of them as you can to run things by them. Right. So, but these are some of the most important ones, the internal stakeholders. Then you have external stakeholders. Might be customers, regulators, suppliers, investors. It could be the community, depending on the project. A lot of times I always engage my suppliers. And I had actually a contract with my suppliers. I'd require them to sign a contract that said, you're going to grow with me and you're going to become proactive with me. And if you failed to do that, we're going to put you on an improvement project. But then as they grew with me, I was able to engage them. Hey, how can you help us become more reliable in our storeroom and whatever? Right. And so you have that to your advantage if you have those relationships. Then you have your primary stakeholders. So this is who is going to be affected by the outcomes. And again, a reliability initiative, if it's for an entire organization, is going to affect the bottom line, which means those organizational outcomes that you're looking to achieve, your primary stakeholder is going to be the C-suite. If it's at a single plant level, then it's the plant manager. Secondary stakeholders. This would be, it could be other departments. For example, safety and quality. They would be secondary stakeholders. They could be impacted. Right. Then you have key stakeholders. These are the people that have influence on the project or whose support you need in order for it to be successful. And you'll know who they are. They're that champion or that voice of influence that can affect, just by saying, I support this, it will get people on board. A lot of times it's a corporate person, could be, or it could be the most influential person in your shop. But they would be a key stakeholder, and you definitely want to get them engaged and on board. Then you have supporting stakeholders. Okay, again, could be suppliers, could be vendors, that type of thing. Okay, so these are the 6 groups, and these are the things that you need to think through when you're building a business case. Who do I need to engage? Who is that person? Who's the one that stands out? Who has the most influence? Who's the one that can tell me no? And so we need to know them and we need to engage them. Then highlight the benefits when you're talking about them. Right? You have to clearly articulate this. And this is something that I spend a lot of time trying to get good at. And I teach it a lot. Right? Reduce maintenance cost. How do you reduce maintenance cost? And what's the purpose? Well, reducing maintenance costs reduces your total cost to produce, which means you affect the EBITDA. Increased uptime. Increased OEE equals increased EBITDA. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. It's profit. Reducing your maintenance costs reduce the bottom line. Increasing uptime through OEE lowers your bottom line. You're producing more with the same resources, which means that cost is being spread across more units, which lowers your cost to produce. Extending asset life. Reducing wear and tear means I don't have to spend capital. For taking care of things with precision maintenance. We extend asset life. Improve safety. There is a direct correlation between how reliable you are and your safety metrics. It's directly correlative. Here's the thing. To understand, we kind of get it wrong, right? We say, for example, wear your PPE, wear your safety glasses. And we say it's safety. It's not safety. It's reliability. Consistently wearing your safety glasses reduces the probability of you getting an eye injury, which leads to the output of safety. You go home with your eyesight. That's the output. The input is consistently wearing them when you know you should be wearing them. That is reliability. And we do a terrible job at explaining this stuff. And we get so focused on the outputs, the results, instead of the inputs. The inputs are what changes the output, and reliability is what changes the output. Name one organization that you know of was super unreliable and yet hasn't had a single lost time injury or whatever. Or name a company that is super unreliable that's never had a quality incident. Name a company that's super unreliable that has the lowest cost to produce. It's counterintuitive. It just doesn't happen. You have to have the input of reliability. And then you have enhanced reputation, which is huge. This is called confidence or competence and credibility. By consistently performing, consistently hitting your numbers, consistently having product on the shelves or whatever it is you produce, it enhances your reputation. To have a reputation that you're a reliable company means a lot. I always know they're going to be there when I need them to. They're always going to have good product. Right? We know what it's like to go to a McDonald's versus, say, a Chick-fil-A. At McDonald's, you never know what you're going to get. Chick-fil-A, you almost guaranteed what you're going to get every time. There's a big difference in the reputation of the company because of that. And whenever we can, we need to quantify the benefits. Like I said, for example, well, currently we are 50% OEE and our cost to produce is $1.96 per unit. If we can increase our OEE through eliminating losses through this reliability initiative, we can get to about 70% OEE within the first year, year and a half. That will take our cost per unit from $1.98 to approximately $1.65, giving us an extra 40 cents per unit across 100 million units per year. And you can extrapolate out that math. It's an easy sell. And it's easy to eliminate a lot of your biggest losses because the solution is typically fairly simple. It's a low-hanging fruit thing. So it doesn't take much time at all. I'll give you an example. A client that I was working with in Illinois, they were at 49% OEE. We spent 2 hours out on the line, and within 2 hours, we solved an issue that was costing them 10 hours of downtime a week. And it was a jam. A jam. 600 1-minute stops per week. That's 10 hours. And they went from 49% OEE to almost 65% OEE just by fixing that one problem. And guess what happened to their costs? They're almost $700,000 saved so far in 3 months on their budgets because they increased throughput. Why? Because it spreads that cost, and they weren't running Saturdays, which reduces it even more. We have to be able to articulate that from a cost perspective. Then we need to address risks. So what's the risk of not investing in reliability? That's fairly easy. We get our current state. High maintenance costs, high downtime, safety and regulatory issues, who knows, right? But it's fairly easy to understand what the risks are if we don't do it. And then to explain how you're going to go about doing it becomes fairly easy as well. How are you going to mitigate the risks of increased maintenance cost? Well, when things don't break, I don't have to buy parts. So how much money am I saving? If things don't break, how much downtime do I have? If things don't break, what's my safety risk? Time that safety risk is the highest is when you're in an unplanned downtime situation. All the added stress and everything, that's when safety issues occur the most, is in those situations. So if I mitigate those situations, my risk goes down. Talk about those risks. Demonstrate other case studies from other people that you know. If you don't have any, send me an email. joseph.anderson@reliabilityx.com, and I'll help you with them. But there's studies out there. We have case studies ourselves, and we can help walk you through it. Then you've got to put a plan together. This is a high level plan, but you need to have it low level enough to where you understand, at least at a high level, the number of resources you need, the cost that's going to take. Are you going to bring in outside help? What's the cost of that? Understand the objectives, come up with objectives for your reliability initiative. And those should be aligned with the organizational objectives, or with the use of any new language you're hearing around the way. How many of you are in the cut headcount and cut budget phase right now? Probably not yet, but you'll be getting there towards the end of the year, I'm sure, if you're not already there. How about you go increase your uptime? That'll eliminate a lot of your problems. Right? And so have a plan on how to go do that. Well, we're going to do a lot of training and a loss analysis, and I need this many people for this many days, and we want to develop champions at each site, whatever that plan is. Show them all the numbers you came up with and how you're going to mitigate safety risks and how you're going to affect the bottom line. Show them the current state versus the future state. How long it'll take you for them to see reality, which would be a year, year and a half to a certain point. And then to get to world class, it might take you up to 10 years. Depends on the organization, how much you're dedicated to it. Then state your objectives. Give out resources, planning, timing, milestones, timelines, whatever you need at a high level. It doesn't have to be a Gantt chart with everything filled out. Just a high level plan, just to show that you know what you're talking about. Then we get to the ROI. So now that we know what it's going to cost and what we need and all that type of stuff, now we get into the ROI. For example, you might need, let's say, $1 million. And they say, oh, well, we don't have that right now. So I agree, but we want to put it on the docket for 2025. That's why I'm getting it in front of you right now. Because with that $1 million, I can return 13, 15, 20, 25, $30 million back to the company. Let me show you how. And you tie OEE to EBITDA. Even if you can't sell the units, you're going to reduce the number of shifts you need to produce. And for a lot of people, they're typically running Saturdays and Sundays at times, which means you're ruining the quality of life of your employees. Most of them want to get their hours, but they don't want to work Saturday and Sunday. You always have the few that always love the overtime because they can't manage their money. But most people would like to put in their 40 and go home. So if you can improve quality of life and improve the bottom line, and in the end, it's cheaper because you can show it. Because as we get more reliable, things don't break. So I don't need as much money in my budgets, although you're not going to tell them that for now, right? But as costs go down, incidents go down, it's a lot cheaper. It's cheaper to be reliable. A lot cheaper. And people can't see that because they don't understand how to get there. Yeah. Then compare your savings. For example, if I can save, I'll give you a case study. We had a single line that we were tasked to turn around, and the company was making no money on the line. After 6 months, we finished the line. 1 year later, made $11 million off of a line that they weren't producing on. And so that's $11 million on a single line. So you're asking for $1 million and you're going to return 11. We promised 5 and they got 11. So if do the math, figure out what you can make, cut it in half. It's still going to be more than enough. But we got the ROI within 6 months on the line. And a year later, they made 11 million, and we weren't even on site then. They were sustaining it. You want to quantify what the expected ROI is, and then take into account other things, not just cost, but safety incidents. Better quality product, no quality incidents. It's better for the environment. It's better for the company reputation, social responsibility, all these types of things. You want to do all these social projects and give to the community, you got to have profit in order to do it. You got to be able to hit those EBITDA numbers. Then engage all the stakeholders. So bring them into the planning process as you're trying to figure out how long it's going to take, what resources you need, and all that type of stuff. Yeah. You want to gather their input, ensure that they're bought in, because then you're going to go present this to management. And you want to say, well, such and such agrees, right? We all want this. This is the direction we want to head. We know this is the right work for the company. This will help for successful implementation. Because it's one thing to sell the project, it's another thing to successfully implement. And like I said before, you have to be a problem solver. You've got to be actively engaged and out trying to solve problems. And be an obstacle remover. A lot of people will have these obstacles in their head, and a lot of time they're perceived because somebody told them they couldn't do something one time. They take it as, well, we don't allow people to do that. And you say, why? Well, because, so-and-so told me one time. Or quality said so. A good one is marking up your equipment for center lines in a food plant. Oh, we can't use anything to mark things up. You can't. So we can't use a food grade marker. but I can use food grade lubricant all over the place. It doesn't make sense. So a lot of people, because they've been told no once, they have perceived obstacle. So to remove that obstacle, you pull the quality group in and you say, listen, if we're using food grade markers to put marks on the machine, what's the problem with that? Oh, there is no problem with that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Because there are people that believe that we're not allowed to use these things out here. Right? Help them remove obstacles. Yeah. When you implement, that's where the rubber meets the road. But first we got to get the buy-in. And while we get the buy-in, we're selling people on these projects. So that's what we want, is to get their buy-in. Then be ready to address questions and concerns, because you're going to go present and you're going to get caught out of left field a lot of times with some random question. But if you know your material and you know your numbers well enough, you should be prepared for this. Okay. A lot of times it's going to be, well, how do you think we're going to get this done with 10 people? Or why is it going to take you a year and a half? Can we do the same thing in 6 months? Or this is a large undertaking. You really think you can get those results in a year? Get a lot of those types of questions. If it's a cost thing, they're going to be like, is there any way to dwindle it down? Well, how do you overcome that objective? It's like, yeah, we can dwindle it down, but that means we dwindle down the quality of this project as well. So do we want to do this right, or do we just want to check a box? Because I've already dwindled it down. So you have to be ready to address a lot of these concerns. There'll be a lot of them, a lot of random, out of nowhere, even things you're not participating and you think don't have anything to do with the project. A lot of times, if a question like that comes from an executive where they're trying to almost stump you, it's probably because they're one of the ones that have gotten that job because they sold the organization on an initiative and it's failing. And now you're presenting on an initiative that could lead to success. And so a lot of those executives that get combative, it's because they're already defensive because you're stepping on their toes. So you have to be aware of that as well, and you have to handle that delicately. And so as long as you've ran your numbers by your finance guy and they're estimates, they're not exact. They don't need to be exact. You take your estimates and you cut them down by 25% or 50%. That way you're conservative. That way when you come out on the other end, you look like a superhero. Then you'll be fine. But this is a lot of times where the wheels start falling off. We just go to somebody because we don't have a case, we haven't studied the numbers and haven't done our own due diligence. We just walk into a room and say, I need a new piece of equipment. Why? Because this one's old. And then they say, okay, and they don't take you serious. Then you go back to the shop mad and tell everybody they're not going to get it for us because we're when really it's your failure. You didn't do your due diligence. You didn't present them with a business case. You came in with the problem. Being a problem teller, come in with solutions. This is how we're going to go get it. How do you resolve breakdowns? A robust maintenance strategy. So we're going to focus on a robust maintenance strategy to minimize our breakdowns. What do you do to focus on process failures? Well, we need to train operators. And we're going to use our maintenance folks to train operators. Show them how to make adjustments to their own machines. They should be able to drive their own car. You call me when the wheel falls off, not when you're turning a corner. I don't need to be sitting on your lap while you're driving, turning the steering wheel. That's what we end up doing a lot of times. What about minor stops? So those are a lot of jam-related issues. What about speed losses? Well, speed losses, we slowed the line down because it never reached design rate. And by slowing it down, we hid a lot of the minor stop issues. So if we can solve those things and talk through them, it's fairly easy to overcome the questions if they're legitimate questions. Okay. Then once we have presented, addressed the questions, gave them our ROI, we know what we're talking about, then we've got a follow-up. So after presenting the project, you follow up with key stakeholders, with all stakeholders, but first primary and key stakeholders to answer any remaining questions. They might have thought of something after they slept on it. But just to show how serious you are, you should be following up. So are there any other questions, any other information you need from me in order to show? Because I'm ready to get this going. I know that, we can be successful, and I don't want to wait if I don't have to wait. Right. And so you do your follow-ups. Make sure you're following up. Okay. So with that, that's all I have. That's the 9-step process. Fairly quick, but it's hard to get into detail in 30, 45 minutes. So if you have any questions, send me an email at joseph.anderson@reliabilityx.com. I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions, or if you want to discuss this further, we can schedule some time to talk, probably in the evenings. But if you're willing, let's schedule some time. And I appreciate you attending today's webinar. If you would, shoot this QR code in the corner. Give me some feedback. Let me know if you want more detail, to talk through more detail on this. My problem is I could talk for 20 hours on a lot of this stuff. So if you have any recommendations of things that you would like to hear, let me know how I did today. Its webinar code is 2024-_18. Scan that QR code, give me feedback. Again, I appreciate y'all being here. Y'all have a blessed day.